In the cold, sterile conference room, the harsh lighting fell across Damon Carter's emotionless face. Across from him, Senator William Langley, a man who once believed his power was untouchable, gripped the armrests of his chair tightly, his eyes betraying clear signs of fear. Damon's voice cut through the silence, calm yet sharp as a blade. "You should know this call is being recorded, and your admission to sabotaging my car's brakes only strengthens the evidence we've already gathered from your office." The room fell into a deathly silence. An empire that had lasted generations was beginning to crumble, all because one man refused to bow to injustice. This isn't just a story about a restaurant. This is a story about challenging an entire system that had long since decayed. If you believe that even the smallest moment can ignite monumental change, then this story is for you. Like, share, and subscribe. To join me on this journey to expose the truth and rebuild justice, starting from the smallest of sparks. The story begins right now. Margaret Hayes stood tall with composed dignity as her reserved table was denied at Kingsley Hall. To them, she was just another woman of color, easily dismissed without consequence. But they were wrong. Behind her graceful retreat loomed the quiet presence of her son, Julian Hayes, the majority shareholder behind the very place that had disrespected his mother. His silence was mistaken for weakness, his patience for surrender, their mistake. As the city's most opulent restaurant became the center of a quiet confrontation against white privilege, a truth gradually emerged. Sometimes a personal insult is merely the first domino in the collapse of an entire system. The silver Bentley glided to a smooth stop at Kingsley Hall's main entrance, its polished surface reflecting the restaurant's warm yellow sign. Margaret Hayes adjusted the string of pearls around her neck, took a deep breath, and gave a slight nod to her driver as he opened the door. At 62, she still carried a stately grace, the result of years spent holding her head high in spaces that never truly welcomed her. "Thank you, Gerald," she said, stepping onto the curb in modest heels. Her elegant black dress, understated yet refined, was chosen specifically for the birthday dinner her son had arranged. Kingsley Hall stood like a fortress of the elite perched at the intersection of Whitmore Avenue, its stone facade and gleaming brass railings a silent testament to expense and exclusivity. Through the tall windows, Margaret could see glittering crystal chandeliers and guests clad in evening wear, mostly white, distinctly old money. As she entered the foyer, she was met with the scrutinizing gaze of the doorman, whose smile noticeably faded as he opened the heavy door. "Good evening, ma'am," he said politely, yet coldly. Inside, the space was even more extravagant than she had imagined. Cream-colored walls adorned with original art, pristine white tablecloths, crystal glasses catching the light from the ornate chandeliers. A pianist in the corner played a soft tune, his fingers dancing effortlessly across the keys. Conversation hushed as Margaret stepped in, curious, surprised, and somewhat disdainful glances turned her way. She paid them no mind. Her focus was on the front reception desk. From a distance, Russell Dean, the restaurant manager, narrowed his eyes as he observed her. At 48, Russell prided himself on preserving the exclusive character of Kingsley Hall. His hair slicked back, tailored suit, impeccable, all projecting authority, though unable to hide the chill in his eyes as he whispered something to a server and approached the desk. Margaret offered a soft smile to the young woman behind the reception. "Good evening. I have a reservation under the name Hayes." The blonde receptionist in her mid-20s. Her name tag read. Clara flipped through the reservation book. Her finger scanned the lines and paused. Then she looked up briefly, glancing at Russell, who had now joined her side. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't see that name on the list." Clara said, her voice slightly higher than usual. Margaret maintained her smile. "It should be there. My son Julian Hayes reserved a VIP table by the window overlooking the garden." Russell chimed in, wearing a falsely courteous expression, though his eyes were cold. "Is there a problem?" "Clara. This guest claims a VIP reservation, but I can't find the name." Russell turned to Margaret, leaning in slightly, his tone patronizing. "I'm very sorry, Mrs. Hayes, but it seems there's been a misunderstanding. The VIP table tonight has already been reserved for a regular guest." He feigned checking the reservation book again, then added, "There's no record under your name. Perhaps there's been a mix-up. Or maybe this isn't the correct location." Margaret's eyes sharpened. "There's no mistake. Mr. Dean, my son Julian Hayes made a very clear reservation for that exact table in honor of my birthday." A flicker of recognition flashed across Russell's face at the mention of Julian, but he quickly regained composure. "I've double-checked." "There's no such name," he replied, then added with a smirk, "We do have a table near the kitchen, if you'd still like to dine." Before Margaret could respond, the main door swung open again. A tall woman in her early 30s entered, hair styled in an elegant updo, wearing a glamorous gown. The foyer stirred with whispers. Everyone recognized her. Sabrina Langford. Russell's demeanor changed entirely. "Miss Langford, so lovely to see you again." "Russell, darling," Sabrina replied, air-kissing both his cheeks. "I trust you've kept my usual table." "Of course, the VIP table is ready." Margaret watched closely, lips pressed into a line. The VIP table, the very one that was supposedly unavailable, was suddenly ready for someone else. Sabrina glanced briefly at Margaret, then turned back to Russell. "I'm with the Australian ambassador. He's parking the car. We'll bring an extra chair." Russell beamed, escorting her toward the VIP table. As they passed, Margaret spoke up, calm but firm. "I believe that's the table my son reserved." Russell halted, irritation creeping into his tone. "As I said, Mrs. Hayes, there seems to be a misunderstanding. The table was reserved well in advance by Miss Langford. But I just heard you say it's her favorite table, not that it was previously reserved." The room fell quiet. Eyes began to turn their way. Russell's expression tightened. "Perhaps you misheard." "No, I heard very clearly," said Margaret, her gaze unwavering. "You said it's her favorite, not that it was booked." "You're lying," Sabrina frowned. "Who is she?" Russell, before he could answer, a young black waiter stepped forward. It was Ethan Brooks, who had been quietly watching everything, fists clenched. "Mr. Dean, I reviewed the reservation book this morning. There was a reservation under the name Hayes at the VIP table." Russell's face darkened. "Return to your station, Ethan. This doesn't concern you." Ethan glanced at Margaret, then quietly walked away. Russell turned back, all pretense gone. "That table is now taken. I've offered you another. Take it or leave it." Around them, guests were clearly watching. Margaret straightened her posture, adjusted her dress, and looked Russell directly in the eye. "Very well," she said, her voice steady and loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "But my son will be very interested to know how Kingsley Hall treats its guests." "I'll be leaving," she said, her voice loud enough for several nearby tables to hear. "But my son, the one who reserved that table, will certainly be very interested in how Kingsley Hall treats its guests." Russell waved a hand dismissively, as if brushing away a trivial matter. "Yes, yes, we sincerely apologize for the inconvenience." Margaret turned and left the main hall, walking with her dignity intact, though inside she was deeply wounded. As she passed the bar area, her eyes happened to meet those of Ethan Brooks. The young waiter gave her a small nod, a subtle gesture, but filled with respect. Outside, the cool night breeze swept down Whitmore Avenue, rustling the tree-lined sidewalks. Margaret took a deep breath, and only then did her hands tremble slightly. She opened her purse, pulled out her phone, and dialed a number so familiar she didn't need to look. After 2 rings, a deep male voice answered. "Mom, What's going on? You're at the restaurant, right, Julian? She replied, her voice strangely steady. We need to talk about Kingsley Hall. The penthouse apartment of Julian Hayes overlooked the entire skyline of downtown. From that height, the city lights glittered like a golden carpet stretching to the horizon. In the quiet room, Julian stood by the window phone pressed to his ear. The perfectly tailored dark gray suit he wore couldn't hide the tension in his tall, solid frame. He listened as his mother recounted everything that had happened. When she finished, he spoke just one sentence, slow and low. Give me an hour, ending the call. Julian set his phone on the walnut desk and took a deep breath to steady himself. Then he pressed the intercom. Kendra, I need you in my office now. Less than a minute later, Kendra Morgan walked in. At 42, she'd been Julian's right hand for nearly a decade, the keeper of all his secrets and internal strategies. Her cool gray suit matched her sharp demeanor, and she never appeared without her tablet in hand. What happened? She asked immediately, sensing the tension in the air. My mother was just publicly humiliated at Kingsley Hall. Julian said, his voice tight with restrained anger. They denied her reserved table and handed it to some debutante named Sabrina Langford. Kendra furrowed her brow. Sabrina Langford, the niece of Senator Walter Langford. Right? I don't care who she is. She could be the president's daughter, and it wouldn't matter. He moved to his desk, placing his finger on a scanner to unlock a drawer. I want you to dig up everything we have on Kingsley Hall. Ownership structure, management, financials, complaint, history, all of it. Kendra nodded, fingers already flying across her tablet. You still own the majority stake there, don't you? 62%, Julian confirmed, pulling out a folder from the drawer. A detail Russell Dean seems to have conveniently forgotten. He opened the folder inside, were all the documents related to his quiet investment in the upscale restaurant. Very few people within the operation knew he was the primary controller. You insisted on keeping that a secret, Kendra reminded him, to see how they'd behave when they didn't know who was really watching. And now we've seen it, Julian said, lips tightening into a thin line. Kendra's tablet pinged. She glanced down, eyes lighting up. An anonymous message just came in through the internal tip line you set up for Kingsley Hall employees. Julian looked up. What does it say? The sender is a waiter named Ethan Brooks. He says this isn't the first time Russell has done something like this. According to him, there's a systemic pattern of racial discrimination, from lost reservations to priority seating arrangements. Julian clenched his jaw. I want everything we can find on Ethan Brooks, and I want all formal and informal complaints involving that restaurant from the past 2 years. As Kendra worked intently, Julian paced the room, thoughts racing with the possibilities now unfolding. To him, Kingsley Hall was never just a financial investment. It was an experiment, a test to see how elite spaces would behave when they didn't know who truly held the power. Kendra looked up. Ethan Brooks, 26. Employed at Kingsley Hall for 14 months. Clean record, punctual, highly rated by customers. Self-funding. Culinary school. Valuable information. Julian nodded. And the complaints. I'm filtering them now. There's a clear pattern. Black customers frequently have their reservations lost, are seated in less desirable spots, or experience longer wait times. Most of it has been handled internally by Russell, never entered into the official logs. Julian nodded, unsurprised. What about Richard Garland, the man listed as the public owner? Kendra shook her head. From what I can tell, he knows nothing. Just shows up for photo ops, collects dividends, and plays the part. Perfect. Julian murmured. He picked up his phone and dialed. After a few rings, a cheerful voice answered. Richard Garland speaking. Hi, Rich, Julian Hayes here. I need to see you in my office tomorrow morning. 9 sharp. What's this about? I thought last quarter's report looked great. 9 a.m. Don't be late. Julian hung up before hearing a response. Kendra raised an eyebrow. Not going to tell him what it's about. Let him worry all night. He turned to his desk and picked up the phone again, this time dialing the restaurant's front desk, his voice adopting the tone of a typical middle-aged businessman. Good evening. I'd like to make a reservation for tomorrow. If possible, the VIP table. My name is David Wilson. Yes, Mr. Wilson. Let me check. The VIP table is available at 7 p.m. tomorrow. Will that work for you? Perfect, Julian said with a smile. Looking at Kendra. I'll take it. Ending the call, he said dryly. So when a man with a name that sounds white calls in the VIP table is suddenly available. Kendra nodded, her expression grave. I just finished scanning. 17 similar complaints in the past year. Russell is good at covering things up, but there are traces in customer service emails and social media posts. Julian turned back to the window eyes scanning the city skyline. Then we almost have everything we need. Almost, Kendra said, hesitating. There's one more thing you need to know about Sabrina Langford. Julian turned around, noting the shift in her tone. She's not just a rich socialite. Her family controls 3 of the country's largest luxury hotel chains, and her uncle, Senator Walter Langford, is the chairman of the Urban Development Committee. If we go after Kingsley Hall, they could retaliate against our other projects. Our Monroe Avenue project is still pending. Zoning approval, Julian said, catching on immediately, and he could kill it with a single phone call. Kendra nodded. If you act now, they'll see it coming. Better to let them expose themselves. Julian's phone lit up, a message from his mother. Don't do anything rash, son. I'm okay. A faint smile touched his lips. Margaret had always been his moral compass, the one who kept him from going too far when faced with injustice. We'll watch them unravel slowly, he said, slipping the phone into his pocket. I want to see just how deep the rot goes. Before we cut it out at the root, Kendra nodded. Smart move. What's your next step? Julian looked out at the city's night sky. First, I'm going to Kingsley Hall. Undercover, I want to observe how they behave when they don't know who I am. Julian Hayes said in a low voice, I want them to show their true faces. He paused for a moment, then continued, his tone colder. Now I want hourly reports on Russell Dean and Sabrina Langford, every secret, every connection, and any weakness we can exploit. Consider it done. Kendra Morgan replied, already taking notes on her tablet. And Kendra, Julian added, his voice dropping lower. Make sure my mother is seated at the best table at James Porter's tomorrow evening. Tell them I'll be in attendance, and I'll be watching how they treat her. After Kendra left, Julian stood alone in his office, the city lights casting long shadows across his solemn face. He picked up a photo frame from his desk. A picture of him as a young boy standing beside his mother Margaret in front of their modest house in an aging neighborhood. In the photo, Margaret wore a nurse's uniform, her face weary yet proud, her hand resting on her son's shoulder. She had worked double shifts, neglecting herself to ensure her son got an education. She had taught him to stand tall, to work twice as hard as others, and never let anyone make him feel lesser. But most of all, she taught him patience and strategy. Those lessons would now be put to use. Julian set the frame down, then picked up his phone and called his tailor Jackson. I need something different this time. No designer labels. I need it to look simple, cheap. I need to be invisible. As he described the specific request, Julian's mind was already several steps ahead, laying the groundwork. The game was beginning, and that restaurant would soon learn just how badly they'd misjudged him. At the same time, across the city in a small apartment on the west side, Ethan Brooks paced quietly between the kitchen and the window. He was wondering if sending that anonymous message last night had been a serious mistake. He had witnessed too much injustice at Kingsley Hall. Many times he wanted to speak out, but always chose silence. Russell Dean didn't even bother hiding his favoritism, and more than once black customers were accidentally seated in the least desirable spots. But last night, watching Margaret Hayes be treated with such disregard just because of her skin color, something in Ethan had snapped. A poised, dignified older woman being ignored as if invisible. He couldn't look away anymore. Still, he knew Russell had long suspected he sided with complaining guests. Just last week, Ethan had been passed over for a lead server promotion, despite being more experienced than those selected. Ethan's phone buzzed a message from his supervisor. Shift change. You're assigned to the VIP section tomorrow. He stared at the screen, feelings of worry and resolve mixing in his chest. The VIP section meant Russell would be watching him closely. It could be punishment. It could be coincidence. Either way, from the moment he sent that message, he had crossed a line he couldn't step back from. Meanwhile, at Kingsley Hall, everything continued as if nothing had happened. Sabrina Langford sat comfortably at the VIP table, her laughter occasionally ringing out like a jarring note amid the restaurant's false elegance. Russell Dean moved between tables like a skilled conductor orchestrating perfection for the upper crust. Only the most observant noticed how often he checked his phone that day, or the faintly strained smile he wore when passing the VIP table, the table that was meant for someone else. By midnight, as the last guest left and staff began cleaning up, Russell retreated to his office. He poured himself a large glass of whiskey and sank into his chair. Everything would return to normal. Tomorrow, he told himself, that woman Margaret Hayes wouldn't come back, and if she complained, it would be buried like all the others. He had shaped Kingsley Hall into a fortress for the elite, a place where they could be among their own shielded from the chaos of change outside Richard Garland, paid him handsomely to maintain that, never once questioning his methods. One dissatisfied woman. Nothing. Russell was very wrong. The next morning, Julian arrived at the office earlier than usual. Kendra was already there with 2 coffees and a thick folder. Everything you asked for, she said, handing him the coffee, and the documents. Russell Dean has worked at Kingsley Hall for 8 years. Before that, he managed 3 other high-end restaurants. None of them kept him more than 3 years. Let me guess, Julian said, opening the file. He left right after complaints started piling up. Exactly, Kendra nodded, very skilled at covering his tracks. But the pattern is clear if you look closely. And there's more. He's embezzling. Julian raised an eyebrow. Small amounts, but they add up. The books are intentionally messy. I only spotted it because I knew where to look. Does Garland know? Highly unlikely. He's oblivious, only cares that the money keeps flowing. And Sabrina Langford. Kendra's expression darkened. It's more complicated. Her family isn't just wealthy. They're politically entrenched. 3 senators have her on speed dial, along with judges and media execs. They've buried at least 2 discrimination lawsuits involving their hotels. Julian sipped his coffee, absorbing the reality. This wasn't just an arrogant manager. It was part of a system. Everything is protected. Russell is just the face of it, Kendra said. A reminder notification appeared on Julian's phone. Meeting with Richard Garland in 30 minutes. Let's see what he has to say. Julian smiled, closing the folder. Then tonight, we go to Kingsley Hall. He recalled something his mother once told him during his first major trial. The strongest move is the one no one sees coming. Tonight, he would launch a move. Russell Dean and Sabrina Langford wouldn't see coming until it was far too late. The transformation was remarkable. The expensive suit designer watch and commanding aura of Julian Hayes were gone. In their place, he wore an off-the-rack blazer slightly too wide at the shoulders, a pale, crooked tie, and scuffed old leather shoes. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. Satisfied, a mid-level office worker, the kind of man who saves all year just to afford one meal at Kingsley Hall. You look like an accountant having a midlife crisis, Kendra teased, leaning against the doorway, tablet still in hand. The more forgettable, the better, Julian replied, adjusting his tie to be more crooked. The meeting with Garland played out exactly as expected. A man utterly in the dark. I didn't know anything about discrimination complaints. He protested. Russell handles all the day-to-day. I just attend galas and play golf. You didn't tell him you're going to the restaurant tonight. The fewer people who know, the better. Julian slid a cheap plastic pen into his blazer pocket. One final touch to complete the look. Kendra nodded in approval. The reservation is under the name David Wilson, as you asked. I've activated audio recording on your watch and a mic in your lapel. The tie clip was fastened perfectly in place. Every sound, image, and word from tonight would be transmitted directly to a private, securely encrypted server. Perfect Julian Hayes said, glancing at the Timex watch on his wrist, a humble choice, in place of his usual Patek Philippe. It's time. 30 minutes later, a simple gray car pulled up in front of Kingsley Hall. Julian paid. The driver stepped out and looked up at the restaurant's facade now through a different lens. Outside the door, a man gave him only a curt nod. None of the usual warmth reserved for the wealthy. Things were already unfolding as expected. Inside, the receptionist was the same blonde woman from before. Her eyes flicked toward Julian and instantly sized him up as an unimportant guest. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" she asked. "Yes, David Wilson, 7 p.m. Julian replied, his voice carrying a slight hesitation, as if uncomfortable in such a high-end place. She scanned the reservation book, her eyes widening slightly when she found the name. "Ah, yes, Mr. Wilson. I see you requested the VIP table if available." "If it's possible, that would be great," Julian said. The receptionist exchanged a look with another staff member, then turned back. "I'm sorry, but that table has been reserved for another party this evening. However, we do have a table near the bar. It's quite nice. I'm sure you'll enjoy it." Julian feigned mild disappointment, then nodded. "I understand. The one by the bar will do." As he made his way through the lobby, he observed every detail. A well-dressed white couple was being led to a prime table by the window, the best spot. Meanwhile, a well-dressed black family was seated in a dim corner near the kitchen. Despite several better tables being unoccupied, Julian's table was right next to the bar, noisy, cramped, and constantly disrupted by servers passing by. He ordered a glass of water and quietly watched. Within just 30 minutes, Julian witnessed at least 3 similar cases. White patrons were treated attentively and seated at ideal locations, while patrons of color were consistently pushed to subpar spots. The disparity extended to service too. His empty water glass remained untouched for 15 minutes before anyone bothered to refill it. By 7:30, Julian saw a white man in a designer suit enter with no reservation, chat briefly and familiarly with the receptionist, and be promptly led to the very VIP table he had just been told was reserved. The injustice was blatant, and Julian had to restrain himself from revealing any real reaction. "Would you like to order anything else, sir?" A young black waiter approached. It was Ethan Brooks. Up close. Ethan looked even younger than his 26 years. His face was professional, but the slight tension in his shoulders betrayed the pressure he was under. "Can I see the menu?" "Please." Julian replied, his eyes fixed on the young man who had courageously exposed Russell Dean. As he handed over the menu, Ethan glanced around quickly and lowered his voice. "Just a heads up, the kitchen's overwhelmed. Tonight, this section will experience long delays." His eyes said something else. This was intentional, not a coincidence. "I appreciate the warning," Julian said with a tone full of meaning. Ethan gave a small nod and turned to walk away, only to be stopped by Russell Dean, who had just emerged from his office with the confident stride of a man in control. Russell said something to Ethan, loud enough to be heard, his tone patronizing and commanding. Ethan merely nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. When the food, overpriced and bland, finally arrived, Julian decided to take the test further. He motioned for Ethan to return. "I'm exploring restaurant investments," Julian said. "This place seems promising." He pulled out a business card prepared in advance by Kendra Morgan bearing the name David Wilson, financial consultant. Ethan's eyes widened for a second, but he maintained composure. "I'm probably not the best person to discuss that with, but I can ask the manager if he's available to speak with you." "Thank you." Julian nodded. 5 minutes later, Russell Dean appeared at his table with a demeanor entirely different from the night before. This time he smiled, brightly, shook Julian's hand with excessive warmth. "Mr. Wilson, I hear you're interested in investing in our restaurant." "David Wilson," Julian replied. "Yes. I'm considering expanding my investment portfolio. The culinary space seems intriguing." "Well, you've come to the right place." Russell sat down uninvited. Kingsley Hall is a gem in the city's dining scene. Our clientele is carefully curated. "I've noticed," Julian said. "How do you maintain such curation?" Russell leaned in, lowering his voice. "Between us, it's all about filtering. We have certain protocols, special reservation policies, strategic seating arrangements. Strategic. For example, our regulars prefer to be surrounded by people like themselves. We make sure that happens." Julian's smartwatch recorded every word. "Does the owner, Richard Garland, know about this?" Russell laughed. "He only cares about profits. I handle the details. Are the profits good, better than expected? Thanks to some creative adjustments." "Creative adjustments," Russell whispered. "Certain tables have special pricing, not always reflected on the official invoice. Not illegal, just optimized." Julian nodded, feigning admiration. "Very clever. For instance, Russell dropped his voice even lower. When certain special guests come in, they usually don't notice the added surcharges. Everything's perfectly reasonable." "Special guests." Russell smirked and waved a hand vaguely. "You know the type, I think I do." Julian replied with a thin smile. "This has been a very informative conversation. If you're serious about investing, I can arrange a private tour." "Full access to our books," Russell said, sliding his business card across the table. "I'll consider it," Julian replied, slipping the card into his pocket. After Russell left to greet new guests, Ethan returned to clear the plates. As he leaned in, he discreetly placed a folded napkin on Julian's lap. Once Ethan had stepped away, Julian opened the napkin under the table. Inside, scribbled in rough handwriting, were the words, "Be careful. He's done this before. People like that woman just disappear." Julian folded the napkin and tucked it into his pocket. He paid the bill, which included an unannounced service fee, and left a generous cash tip for Ethan, hidden under his water glass, to keep it safe from other staff. As he prepared to leave Kingsley Hall, he caught a snippet of conversation from a nearby table. Russell's voice rang out. "It's hard to maintain standards these days. Everyone's preaching inclusion and equality. But our regulars come here because we know what special really means." The white men at the table chuckled and clinked their glasses in approval. Julian stepped out of the restaurant, the night breeze brushing against his face. The game had officially begun. His jaw clenched, but Damon Blake's mind remained sharp. What he had seen and heard far exceeded his expectations. This wasn't just discrimination. It was clear evidence of financial fraud. Outside, Damon sent a text to Lisa Morgan. "Did you get all of it?" The reply came within seconds. Every word. "It's worse than we thought." "Start compiling the report," Damon replied. "It's time to initiate Phase 2. The car pulled away from the curb just as Damon caught sight of Daniel Bennett stepping out of the side door of Kingsley Hall phone pressed to his ear, his face anxious. Damon made a mental note. When this blew up, Daniel would need protection. Because by now, there was no doubt Kingsley Hall would fall and Gareth Holloway would go down with it. Lisa Morgan's office at Blake Enterprises reflected her meticulous nature. 3 computer monitors displayed different aspects of the investigation: financial records, employee testimonies, and social media data. On the wall, a thread and pin diagram connected key events like a law enforcement crime board. She barely looked up when Damon walked in, fingers still flying over the keyboard. "I've compiled all the data. Last night's recordings are gold. Gareth practically confessed to financial fraud and discriminatory practices." Damon loosened his tie, now back in his everyday attire. He didn't need a suit to project power. Every movement exuded it. And on the financial side, do we have enough proof? More than enough. Lisa turned in her chair, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "I cross-checked credit card bills between black and white customers who ordered the same items. The result: over 80% of non-white patrons were charged arbitrary surcharges compared to just 5% of white patrons. Systemic discrimination." Damon nodded. "Exactly what we need." "That's not all." Lisa continued, turning to her screens. "I found 3 former employees willing to testify about Gareth's seating policies, and Daniel Bennett provided the reservation logs names. With minority indicators were erased without explanation. Is Daniel safe? Gareth has to suspect him by now. He's being careful. Says Gareth's been watching him closely ever since what happened to your mother, but he hasn't been fired yet." Lisa handed Damon a thick dossier. "This is the full report, every piece of evidence. Indisputable." Damon flipped through the pages, his expression growing more tense. "Excellent work. Now we move to the next phase." "Are you sure?" Lisa asked cautiously. "We could just terminate Gareth, implement new policies." "This isn't just about one racist manager," Damon said firmly. "It's about exposing the system. Gareth is just the tip of the iceberg. Veronica Wycliffe needs to learn that her family's influence can't protect her forever." Lisa nodded in understanding. "I've already prepped an anonymous press kit. The headline: Luxury Restaurant Caught Charging Discriminatory Fees. Prejudice Behind the Glamour." 3 major newspapers responded positively to my tip. "Send it," Damon ordered, and launched the social media campaign simultaneously. With a few keystrokes, Lisa activated the plan they'd carefully crafted over the last 24 hours. Within minutes, audio clips from Damon's smartwatch were circulating online, accompanied by data charts exposing price discrepancies among different customer groups. "Now we wait," Damon said, moving to the window. "It won't take long." He was right. Before the afternoon was over, Kingsley discrimination was trending. Former customers began sharing their own experiences of being mistreated at the restaurant, triggering a domino effect the news outlets couldn't ignore. Damon's phone rang. Richard Easton's panicked voice burst through the line the moment he picked up Damon. "Have you seen this? The restaurant's being torn apart online. People are accusing us of racism, discriminatory pricing. This is a disaster. I'm aware of the situation." Damon replied calmly. "We need to do something. Release a statement. Hire a crisis PR firm. I've called an emergency shareholder meeting for 5 p.m. Damon cut in. "As the majority stakeholder, that's within my right." "Majority stakeholder," Richard stammered. "That investment group is you." "I own 62% of Kingsley Hall," Damon confirmed. "See you at 5. He ended the call and turned to Lisa, who was monitoring the media storm. "What's it like inside the restaurant?" "Total chaos," Lisa replied. "Mass cancellations, non-stop calls from the press. Garrett's losing it in his office. He just suspended Daniel, blaming him for the leak. Damon's eyes darkened. Make sure Daniel is protected. Full-pay legal support if necessary. Another alert popped up on Lisa's screen. Breaking Restaurant just announced it's closing today due to plumbing issues. Clearly just an excuse to avoid the press. Too late, Damon remarked, seeing the images of news vans lined up outside Kingsley Hall. This story has momentum. By 4:30 p.m., Damon sat at the head of a conference table in a downtown office. Lisa was at his right, a thick folder before her. The door opened and in walked Richard Easton, followed by Gareth Holloway, his usual arrogance replaced by a look of visible distress. "What is going on?" Gareth started, then quickly adjusted his tone. "Apologies, but this is obviously a serious misunderstanding. Please sit." "Mr. Holloway," Damon said coolly, "we have a lot to discuss." "I don't understand," Richard complained as he sat. "One moment, we're running the city's most prestigious restaurant. The next, we're being accused of racism all over the news." "It's not an accusation," Damon corrected. "It's an exposure. And there's one more guest arriving shortly." As if on cue, the door swung open. Veronica Wycliffe entered, the polish of her usual appearance replaced by fury. "This is defamation. My family's lawyers are already involved." She stopped when she saw Damon. "Who is he? Why is he here?" "Veronica Wycliffe, meet Damon. Blake," Richard said weakly. "He owns 62% of Kingsley Hall." Veronica's eyes widened as the name sank in. Blake, as in Eleanor Blake." "She's my mother." Damon confirmed. "The woman you and Gareth humiliated 2 nights ago." Silence swept over the room. Realization dawned on every face. You're willing to destroy an entire restaurant over one small incident. Gareth challenged. "One small incident," Damon replied icily. "Lisa, please distribute the documents." Lisa handed each person a thick file. "This contains 27 documented cases of discrimination over the past 6 months, including testimony from former staff, reservation, data analysis, and proof of pricing discrepancies. This is all circumstantial." Gareth stammered. "I was at the restaurant last night, Mr. Holloway," Damon said, "as David Wilson, the potential investor. You were so eager to impress, every word you said was recorded." Jack Morton stared at the table, frozen, as Ethan Grant's words echoed through the boardroom. Jack's face had turned pale. He knew things had spiraled out of control. Not just discrimination anymore, but financial fraud that could land him behind bars. "This is illegal. You can't record without permission," Jack stammered, voice cracking. "Actually, I can," Lisa Morgan said calmly. "This state only requires one-party consent for recording. It's perfectly legal." Richard Albright looked drained, his face ghost white. "Ethan, I swear I had no idea this was happening. I never approved any discriminatory policy." "You didn't have to," Ethan replied, his voice low but commanding. "You just sat back, collected profits, and ignored how they were made." Veronica Langley, who had remained silent until now, finally stood, eyes blazing. "So what do you want? Mr. Grant money? An apology? If you think you can blackmail the Langley family, then what I want is accountability." Ethan interrupted coldly. "Starting with the immediate termination of Jack Morton and a complete overhaul of West Haven Manor's policies." "You don't have the authority to fire me," Jack shouted. "I'm the executive director here." "Not anymore," Ethan said plainly. "I'm now the majority shareholder. As of today, I'll be assuming the role of executive director." He slid a folder across the table toward Richard. "This is the agreement to transfer your remaining shares to me." Richard's eyes widened. "You're forcing me out of my own restaurant. This is extortion." "This is business," Ethan replied. "You have 2 options. Sell me your shares for a very generous offer, or prepare to face the legal and media storm that's coming. The financial fraud alone could lead to criminal prosecution." "Fraud." What fraud? Richard asked, voice barely above a whisper. Lisa pressed a button, and the large screen behind them lit up with a detailed financial breakdown. Unjustified surcharges for black patrons, unreported cash transactions, inventory losses, while management profits rose, all backed by documentation. Richard slumped, hands trembling as he signed the transfer papers. "And you, Mr. Morton," Ethan turned to Jack, "are terminated effective immediately. Security is waiting outside to collect your key card and escort you out." Jack jumped up, his chair toppling over. "You'll regret this. You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Oh, I know exactly who I'm dealing with," Ethan replied, his gaze ice cold. "A petty man who abused what little power he had to harm people who look like him." As Jack was escorted out, Ethan turned to face Veronica, still seated, her expression hard as stone. "Ms. Langley, I can't fire you from your own life, but I can ensure your involvement in this will not be forgotten." Veronica let out a sharp laugh, her tone cutting. "This will blow over. My family has survived worse scandals." Ethan leaned forward. "Maybe, but I wonder what your uncle Senator Langley would think about the 5 racial discrimination lawsuits quietly settled by your family's hotel chain in the past 3 years, or the labor violations at your Miami property." For the first time, unease flickered across Veronica's face. "Are you threatening me?" "Want to see if I'm bluffing?" Ethan asked, holding up his phone. "One call, and the whole story goes public." The room thickened with tension. Finally, Veronica stood clutching her purse. "You have no idea where you've just started, Mr. Grant." "On the contrary," Ethan smiled. "I know exactly what I've started. This isn't just about a restaurant. It's about dismantling an entire system." As Veronica stormed out, Lisa spoke. "She won't let this go. The Langley family plays dirty." "Let them come," Ethan replied, his eyes fixed on the city lights beyond the glass. "We're just getting started." Lisa's phone rang. News of Jack's firing. Just leaked, media's exploding again. "Is everyone safe?" Ethan asked Daniel. "Texted some of Jack's loyal staff for blaming him. Bring him back as a restructuring advisor." Ethan ordered full legal and financial protection. Lisa smiled. "Already drafted the offer. Press conference is scheduled for tomorrow morning." "Excellent," Ethan nodded, "and booked the VIP table at West Haven Manor. Tomorrow night for me and my mother." "You're going back into the chaos?" Lisa asked. "Exactly, to show the change has already begun." After Lisa left, Ethan stood alone, watching the sun sink behind the city skyline. His phone buzzed. It was Ellen Grant. "You've fired the whole management team, haven't you?" Her voice was filled with concern. "Not all of them," Ethan replied. "Just the ones who enabled discrimination. This is bigger than me, isn't it?" "It always was," Ethan confirmed. "What happened to you was just the spark. Be careful, son. People like Veronica don't go down easy." "I know," Ethan said, his eyes locked on the screen displaying the new design for West Haven Manor. A place still elegant, but now open to all. No race barriers, no coded names. The battle was just beginning, but Ethan Grant was ready morning. Sunlight filtered through the large glass window of the private meeting room in Damon Clark's office, casting long shadows across the gleaming oak table. The atmosphere was tense as Damien intently observed the 3 people seated across from him. Harold Bennett adjusted his tie, his face stricken from the events of the past few days. Trevor Hawkins, though trying to maintain his composure, betrayed his anxiety with a slight tremor in his hand as he reached for his glass of water. And finally, Vivian Langley, impeccably dressed in a cream-colored suit, sat upright, her face indifferent except for a slight curl of her lips into a contemptuous smirk. "Thank you all for coming," Damien began, his voice calm. Beside him stood Lisa Morgan, tablet in hand, her sharp gaze sweeping across each person as if waiting for any suspicious sign. Don't pretend this is a decent business meeting, Mr. Clark. Vivian spoke coldly, her eyes still focused on her polished nails. Damien chuckled dryly. Very well, Miss Langley. Let's get straight to the point. I am now the sole owner of Astor Hall. The previous management team has been dismissed, and anti-discrimination policies will be implemented immediately. Trevor leaned forward, trying to appear remorseful. Mr. Clark, I sincerely apologize for the incident with your mother's table reservation. It was just a technical error, no ill intention behind it. A technical error that conveniently targets customers of color. Damien questioned his tone. Still calm. I personally heard you talk about your so-called filtering system. Harold's sweat beading on his forehead forced a smile. We can improve everything. New policies, retraining staff, whatever you need, just give us a chance to make it right. There are no more chances, Richard. The documents you signed yesterday transferred all remaining shares to me. I was forced to sign, Harold protested weakly. The signature still looks pretty steady. Lisa interjected, sliding a copy of the contract toward him. Vivian, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke, her voice soft but full of authority. You're making a big mistake, Mr. Clark. My family has more influence in this city than you realize. We have many connections. Is that a threat? Miss Langley, Damien stared straight at her. Just a realistic reminder. She shrugged. My uncle heads the Urban Development Committee, the one reviewing your Maple Street project. My cousin sits on the board of the bank, funding your company. Every action has consequences. Before Damien could respond, his phone vibrated. Lisa glanced at the screen and whispered something into his ear that made his eyes turn icy. Excuse me, I need to take this call. Damien stood and left the table. Lisa turned to face the three of them. Let me be clear. We have comprehensive evidence, videos, financial records, testimonies, documenting every discriminatory act at Astor Hall. If any of you attempt to retaliate against Mr. Clark, it will all be made public. Vivian let out a soft laugh. Morgan, you've been with Damien for over 10 years, haven't you? You should know, scandals are temporary. Power is permanent. Not with this one, Lisa replied confidently. Damien returned his expression grave. That was my legal team. An anonymous complaint was just filed with the state licensing board accusing Astor Hall of financial fraud during Harold's management. That's impossible, Harold stammered. I wasn't the one who filed it, Damien confirmed. Someone else has entered the game. Vivian gripped the arm of her chair tightly. What are you talking about? Damien activated the large screen on the wall. A breaking news banner appeared. Luxury hotel chain. Under investigation for systemic discrimination. It didn't name the restaurant, but the implication toward the Langley family's chain was clear. The meeting room door opened. A man in his 30s entered carrying a briefcase. This is Jacob Bennett, my head of security. Damien introduced. He uncovered something interesting about previous lawsuits involving Langley hospitality hotels. Jacob opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick file. 5 lawsuits in the past 3 years, all quietly settled and original records erased from the system. That's impossible, Harold gasped. Entirely possible. If you have a judge in your pocket, Jacob said, one who just happens to be Vivian Langley's godfather. You have no proof, Vivian retorted. Damien placed a recording device on the table and pressed play. A man's voice filled the room. Vivian, the Davis case is taken care of. All racial discrimination details have been wiped. Your father can rest easy. Vivian's face turned pale. Mr. Davis kept all the recordings. He called them insurance, Damien explained. Trevor suddenly spoke up. I had nothing to do with those cases. All the policies were set by. Shut up, Trevor. Vivian snapped. Damien clasped his hands together. Here's how it's going to be. I will take over the operation of Astor Hall and all discriminatory practices and turn it into a model of fairness. Trevor is fired. Harold, you can keep your reputation if you cooperate. And as for you, Vivian—" "And what about me?" Vivian asked, her voice icy. "That depends on your choice. I don't want a war with your family, but if forced, I won't hesitate." Damien slid a contract across the table toward her. A non-interference agreement. "Your family stays away from my business and company, and I'll keep all the evidence of wrongdoing. Confidential." Vivian stared intently at the contract. The private meeting room of Damon Carter was flooded with early morning light. Long shafts of sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling glass window, casting shadows on the gleaming oak table. The air was thick with tension. Damon observed the three people across from him with a cold gaze. Richard Albright shifted uncomfortably, his tie seemingly tightening with every passing second. Gareth Simmons struggled to maintain a calm facade, but the slight tremor in his hand as he held his glass of water betrayed his anxiety. And finally, Veronica Langley flawlessly put together her cream-colored suit. Without a single wrinkle, her lips curled slightly as if she scorned the entire situation. "Thank you all for coming," Damon began, his voice even, but cold as ice. Beside him, Lisa Morgan sat silently, her hand resting on a tablet, her sharp gaze tracking every movement. "It's not like we had much of a choice, did we?" Veronica sneered, her eyes still fixed on her meticulously painted nails. "Then let's get straight to the point," Damon replied, opening the file in front of him. "I am now the official owner of Westbrook Manor. The former management team has been dismissed, and we will be implementing a comprehensive anti-discrimination policy." Gareth leaned forward, his expression of remorse seeming somewhat forced. "I would like to offer my sincere apologies for the incident involving your mother. It was merely a system error. No discriminatory intent whatsoever. A system that only errors when processing customers of color." Damon asked softly, though his eyes were sharp as knives. "We have always served anyone who meets the criteria." Gareth stammered. "Come on, Gareth," Damon cut him off. "I personally heard you talking about your so-called filtering system." Albright, sweating profusely, quickly jumped in. "We can fix everything. Retrain staff, new policies. Whatever you need, just say the word." "It's too late, Richard. This establishment now belongs to me. The documents you signed yesterday are final. Signed under duress." Albright weakly protested. "Your signature looks very steady to me," Lisa said, sliding a copy of the documents toward him. At that moment, Veronica spoke for the first time, her tone glacial. "You are making a grave mistake, Mr. Carter. My family's connections in this city run deeper than you think." "Are you threatening me?" Damon stared straight at her. "Consider it a reminder." Veronica shrugged. "My uncle is the chairman of the Urban Development Board, the one reviewing your project next month. My cousin is a director at First National Bank, the institution holding several of your company's loans." Before Damon could respond, his phone vibrated. Lisa glanced at the message and leaned in to whisper something in his ear. His expression remained unchanged, but his eyes darkened. "Excuse me for a moment," he said, and left the table. Lisa turned toward the three across from her. "Carter Enterprises has gathered sufficient evidence of discriminatory practices at Westbrook Manor recordings, financial records, and witness statements. If any of you attempt retaliation, everything will be made public." "Ms. Morgan, isn't it?" Veronica said with a thin smile. "You've been working for Damon for over 10 years, right? You must know scandals are temporary. Power is permanent." "Not with a scandal like this one," Lisa replied curtly. Damon returned, his face grim. "An anonymous complaint has just been filed with the licensing board accusing Westbrook Manor of financial fraud. I didn't submit it. It seems others affected by Langley family hotels have taken an interest." He pressed a button on the table. The door opened, and a man entered carrying a briefcase. "This is Jacob Bennett, my head of security." He uncovered something interesting about previous lawsuits. Jacob opened the file and laid it on the table. 5 racial discrimination lawsuits, all quietly settled with confidentiality clauses. Oddly enough, the original case files were purged from the system. "That's impossible," Albright exclaimed. "It's entirely possible when you have a friendly judge in your pocket." Jacob responded, "A judge who happens to be Veronica's godfather." "You have no proof," Veronica snarled. "We have recordings," Damon replied coldly, placing a playback device on the table. A man's voice filled the room. "Veronica, the Davis case is done. No more racial discrimination details left in the record. Your father can rest easy." Veronica's face went pale. "Where did you get that?" "From Mr. Davis himself, the one who recorded everything as insurance." Damon said. Gareth, who had been silent until now, suddenly panicked. "I had nothing to do with it." "It was all the system." "Shut up," Veronica snapped. Damon leaned forward. "From now on, Westbrook Manor will become a symbol of fairness. Mr. Simmons has been fired. Mr. Albright can preserve his reputation if he cooperates." "And what about me?" Veronica asked, her voice icy. "That depends on you. I don't want a war. But I'm ready for one if necessary." He slid a contract toward her. "A mutual non-interference agreement. You and your family stay away from my businesses, and I will keep the judicial misconduct evidence confidential." Veronica glanced quickly at the agreement. "My family isn't used to backing down to people like you, Mr. Carter." "Then consider me their first exception," Damon replied. Damon Carter cut in before Lisa Morgan could say more. "We don't need to guess. I'm certain Daniel Williams disappearing right before the press conference wasn't a coincidence." At 9:30 a.m., as they were preparing to leave the office for the press event, Damon received an anonymous email. The subject line was blunt: "Stop before it's too late." Attached was a detailed file outlining personal information about his mother, close associates, and even his own daily schedule information that could only have been gathered through illegal surveillance. Without saying a word, Damon immediately forwarded the email to his security team. Then he turned to Lisa. "Let's go. We have a press conference to deliver." Despite a flurry of media attacks and pressure mounting on their supporters, the press conference went ahead as scheduled. Damon stood firmly at the podium with Eleanor Carter, his resilient mother, by his side. His demeanor was calm, his gaze unwavering. "Good morning," he began, his voice steady. "Yesterday, I officially became the sole owner of Westbrook Manor. Today, I announce a full-scale reform of this establishment committed to preserving its class while ensuring every customer is treated fairly without discrimination based on race, origin, or appearance." A reporter interrupted Mr. Carter. "Channel 9 reported this morning that you coerced the former owner into selling the restaurant." Any comment, Damon offered a faint smile. "Mr. Richard Albright voluntarily sold his shares after being made aware of the discriminatory practices and financial misconduct under his management. He chose to do the right thing rather than face the consequences." Another reporter raised his voice. "What about accusations that this is all just personal revenge because of your mother?" At that moment, Eleanor stepped forward. Her voice was warm yet authoritative. "My experience at Westbrook Manor was just one example. Many others have faced injustice without the means to fight back. My son is not seeking personal revenge. He is fighting to change a system." The press conference lasted 30 minutes. Damon patiently countered each hostile question. By the end, public opinion had begun to shift. Several reporters started asking sharp questions about the Langley family's litigation history. As they stepped off the stage, Lisa whispered, "Our 2 investors just called to confirm their continued support. They're very impressed." "One small battle, won," Damon muttered, "but the war has only just begun." That afternoon, while they were meeting with the legal team to discuss delaying the Thompson Street project, Damon received an urgent call from his CFO. "We have a major problem," the CFO reported. "The West Side development deal just collapsed. Brighton Properties pulled out without explanation." Damon closed his eyes, silently absorbing the blow. West Side was a key commercial project expected to generate massive profits. "How much are we losing?" he asked. "At least $12 million already invested. More importantly, if we don't break ground within a month, we lose the land rights entirely." Hanging up. Damon stood silently by the window. In less than 24 hours, the Langleys had managed to destroy one major project and delay another. Their ruthlessness was astonishing. Lisa entered, her face tense. Still no sign of Daniel. She held out a plain envelope. Inside was a single typed sheet. "Not everyone has the strength to hold on to principles. Some have families to protect." Beneath it was an address in a neighboring city. "He ran," Damon concluded. "They threatened him." "We can't blame him," Lisa said quietly. No, Damon nodded. "This is how they operate, by spreading fear." The day only grew worse. A surprise environmental inspection that failed a suspended license, and 2 other investors requesting urgent discussions. The Langleys' message was clear: either Damon backed down or he would be destroyed. Late that evening, Damon decided to drive himself instead of using his private driver. While on the highway, his phone rang. It was Jacob Bennett. "We've identified the source of the surveillance on you and Mrs. Eleanor. It's Blackstone Group, a private security firm with ties to several powerful families, including the Langleys. Dig deeper," Damon instructed. As the call ended, Damon felt his car accelerate unnaturally. He pressed the brakes, no response. Pressed harder still, nothing. His sharp instincts screamed the brake system had been tampered with. Staying calm, Damon quickly downshifted to slow the engine skillfully, maneuvering the car toward the guardrail, grinding against it until the vehicle came to a full stop. Taking a deep breath, he called Jacob back. "Someone sabotaged my car. This isn't just a threat anymore. They're actually trying to kill me." When the security team arrived, an inspection confirmed it. The brake lines had been carefully cut-engineered to cause a fatal accident without easy traceability. That night in the security meeting room at Carter Tower, the atmosphere was heavy as they reviewed the situation. "This is beyond business now," Lisa said, her voice slightly trembling. "It's business and crime," Damon corrected. "And the Langleys just showed us how far they're willing to go." "We should go to the police," Jacob suggested. "With what?" Damon frowned. "There's evidence of sabotage, but no direct link to anyone. The Langleys will have made sure of that." "Then what's the next move?" Lisa asked Damon. Looked around the room, his eyes filled with steely resolve. "We've been playing defense for too long. From now on, we go on the offensive." "What do you mean?" Lisa asked. "Expose them," he turned to Jacob. "I want every financial record shady transaction and personal scandal involving the Langley family. Start with Veronica Langley and William Langley. You have 48 hours. Then he turned to Lisa. "Reach out to independent journalists, the ones known for exposing corruption. We're bringing the truth into the light 10. I want the full background on every discrimination lawsuit involving the Langley Properties hotel chain." Damon Carter ordered, his voice calm but razor sharp. "We don't need direct accusations. Just connect the dots and let the media figure it out." "And what about the business attacks?" Lisa Morgan asked, her eyes filled with concern. "We endure them for now," Damon replied. "The Thompson Street and West Side projects are important but not critical. If necessary, we can absorb the losses." Jacob Bennett, head of security, interjected. "And what about your mother, if they were willing to tamper with your car?" "Move Eleanor Carter to a safe house tonight," Damon commanded without hesitation. "Full security detail. No exceptions. The meeting ended, and the team members quickly left the room to execute their orders. Left alone, Damon quietly pulled out his phone and stared at a photo he always kept close, a picture of him and his mother in front of their old house. The Langleys had made a grave mistake. They thought that money and power could break anyone. What they didn't understand was that years of living through injustice had forged him patience, iron will, and resilience that far surpassed any privilege they had ever known. They had made this personal, and now they would face the consequences. Across the city inside the sprawling Langley estate, Senator William Langley ended a call with a satisfied smile. The break situation was a little excessive, he remarked, sipping his whiskey, but effective sources say Carter is retreating. Veronica Langley, seated across from him, smirked coldly. He needs to understand the true cost. Exactly, William nodded. By next week, the Thompson Street project will be dead. Investors will pull out and Carter Enterprises will reel. And Westbrook Manor? Veronica asked. Once he's weak enough, we'll force him to sell it back, William sneered, to a more suitable owner. Neither of them noticed the tiny blinking light on the desk phone. A silent line had been tapped, recording every word of their conversation. The real war was just beginning. 2 days after the highway incident, Damon stood before the wall of electronic screens in the top-floor security operations center of Carter Enterprises. All around, security staff moved swiftly, updating feeds and executing orders. Lisa entered carrying a thick file stamped confidential in bold red letters Jacob's team delivered. She announced, placing the file on the table. Everything on the Langley family as you asked. Damon opened the file, his gaze growing colder with each page. Their empire is bigger than we thought, Lisa remarked, and dirtier. Tax evasion, bribery of officials, environmental fraud. Damon listed off, flipping through the documents quickly. And Senator Langley, Lisa said, pulling out a separate folder, used his position on the Urban Development Committee to funnel government contracts to shell companies, eventually channeling the money into the family trust. High-level money laundering disguised as legitimate business. Damon concluded, and the phone call at the Langley estate, Lisa added, was crystal clear. He admitted to tampering with your brakes. Damon stood silently for a moment, looking out over the glittering city skyline. Then he turned back, his voice firm. It's time to move. What's your next step? Lisa asked. Announce a full forensic audit of Westbrook Manor. Lisa's eyes widened in shock. Right now. We haven't countered their media attacks yet. Exactly, Damon said with a cold smile. They're expecting us to play defense with legal motions. PR spin. But we'll strike where they least expect it. The next morning, major TV networks gathered outside Carter Enterprises headquarters. Rumors swirled that Damon Carter would announce his withdrawal under pressure. But when Damon stepped up to the podium, dressed sharply, exuding absolute confidence, those expectations shattered. Good morning, he began, his voice resonating through the courtyard. Today, I announce the initiation of a full forensic audit of all financial activities at Westbrook Manor under its previous management, reviewing every transaction, partner, and special agreement over the past 5 years. A buzz of whispers filled the hall. We have already found evidence of financial fraud, tax evasion, and systemic discriminatory practices. These findings will be turned over to the appropriate authorities. A reporter raised a hand. Aren't you afraid of retaliation from powerful forces? Damon smiled calmly. I believe in transparency and accountability. If anyone feels uncomfortable, perhaps they should reconsider their business practices. Another voice rang out. Is this move a reaction to the attacks on your company? Damon responded succinctly. No. This is a response to documented wrongdoing. As the press conference ended, Lisa showed Damon her tablet. Langley Hospitality Group's stock had plummeted by 8% in just 30 minutes. Back at the office, Damon took a call over a newly secured line. Senator William Langley's voice crackled through cold and threatening. "You're playing a very dangerous game." "Carter, am I?" "Senator," Damon smirked, "I know exactly what I'm doing. Standing up to a corrupt system that's gone unchallenged for too long. You think you can take down my family?" William's voice was a low growl. "This city has changed," Damon said, "and every empire falls. Senator." A long silence followed. "Then prepare yourself, Carter," William whispered menacingly before ending the call. Damon Carter placed the phone down, his eyes steely as he stared out at the city lights. The real battle was just beginning. Damon set the phone down and turned to Lisa Morgan, who had been monitoring the entire conversation. He took the bait. Lisa confirmed a smirk tugging at her lips. "Get ready," Damon ordered. "The moment the Langleys try to hide documents at any location, I want to know immediately." The next 48 hours unfolded exactly as predicted. The surveillance system Jacob Bennett's team had secretly installed captured footage of Veronica Langley herself, sneaking into the Westbrook Manor offices, clearing out files and attempting to access the computer systems. But Lisa had found the real vulnerability: Veronica's private real estate company, an entity separate from the Langley family's primary hotel conglomerate, used to launder money from dirty political deals. "This is the weakest link," Lisa said, laying out a complex financial diagram she had compiled. "We're not going to hit Langley Hospitality directly." Damon nodded. "We'll topple their empire from the unexpected route." The plan unfolded precisely as they had hoped. While the Langley family threw all their resources into defending their hotel and political fronts, Damon's team quietly tightened the noose around the real estate company. 3 days later, Damon received a message from an unknown number. "Found something big. Need to meet. Not safe to talk over the phone. D.W." Daniel Williams had returned. The meeting was arranged at a small cafe in the eastern part of the city. Damon went alone, but had security teams stationed discreetly throughout the area. Daniel looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes from sleepless nights. "Sorry for disappearing," Daniel said the moment Damon sat down. "They threatened to take custody of my sister's kids." "If I testified, I understand," Damon replied gently. "You did the right thing to protect your family." Daniel leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "But that's not the only reason I'm reaching out. I remembered something twice a month. Veronica holds a private meeting in the VIP room after hours." "What kind of meeting?" Damon asked. "Real estate deals." Daniel whispered, "I used to serve drinks. They signed paperwork, all off the books." "What days, second and fourth Tuesdays of each month?" "Never on the reservation system. Gareth handled it personally. This was the missing piece." Damon needed proof that Veronica had turned Westbrook Manor into a covert money laundering hub. "Are you willing to give an official statement?" Damon asked Daniel. Hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "My family has been relocated to safety. I don't want to keep running with Daniel's testimony secured." Damon immediately moved to the next phase. He arranged a private meeting with Veronica, pretending to seek a truce. The meeting was set in a neutral law firm office. Veronica arrived with 2 attorneys, her demeanor composed, but her eyes full of suspicion. "I appreciate you coming," Damon began politely. "Don't waste time," Veronica replied icily. "What do you want?" Damon slid a document across the table. "A deal. I will limit the audit at Westbrook Manor to internal operations only. No deeper digging. And what do you want in return?" "Your family ceases all interference in my business. The Thompson Street project gets approved. The media attacks stop." Veronica narrowed her eyes, skeptical. Finding no obvious trap, she reluctantly nodded. "I'll need to consult my uncle. I'll wait for your answer until tomorrow morning," Damon replied. Just as anticipated, the Langleys believed Damon had been forced to retreat. They signed the agreement with smug satisfaction. But 24 hours later, a devastating blow struck an independent journalist, released a bombshell investigation. Veronica Langley's private real estate company was exposed for money laundering, illegal transactions, and involvement in corrupt government contracts. The article included full financial records, Daniel Williams' testimony, and audio recordings of Veronica instructing clients on how to circumvent the law. The media exploded. The FBI announced an official investigation. 3 of Senator Langley's key political allies rushed to issue public statements distancing themselves. Langley Hospitality Group's stock plunged, falling to its lowest level in 5 years. And to deliver the final blow, Damon released the recording of William Langley admitting to sabotaging Damon's car brakes. The news that morning was explosive. Senator William Langley had been officially arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit murder based on forensic evidence gathered by Jacob Bennett's team from the car brake sabotage case. Sitting in his office, Damon Carter felt no triumph, no satisfaction. Only a heavy sense of gravity that justice finally had been served. The system that had protected people like Langley for generations was now exposed for what it truly was, a network of corruption designed to maintain power and privilege. For the few, Lisa Morgan entered, carrying an updated dossier. Senator Langley was arrested an hour ago. She reported Veronica Langley is trying to flee the country, but her passport has been flagged. Damon nodded, his eyes drifting away from the TV showing chaotic scenes outside the courthouse and their network collapsing. Lisa confirmed. 2 judges have recused themselves from related cases. A city councilman has resigned, and 3 corporate executives with ties to the Langleys have taken indefinite leaves of absence. Domino effect, Damon murmured. They're so used to operating above the law. Lisa said they never planned for what would happen if the truth came out. Damon gazed out at the city skyline, his heart heavy. He knew there were many other powerful families still operating similar systems in the shadows. Today's victory, though significant, was only one small battle in a much larger war. "What about Westbrook Manor?" Lisa asked. "Everything's ready." Damon turned back, his eyes bright. "The restaurant will reopen next week, under a new name with a new management team. It'll stand as living proof that change is possible, even in places everyone thought hopeless. And a reminder, Lisa smiled never to underestimate a woman just because she wasn't seated at the right table. "Exactly," Damon said with a soft laugh. 1 week after William Langley's arrest, Damon Carter walked alongside his mother, Eleanor Carter, into the newly rebranded space now called Eleanor's. Wearing a graceful lavender dress, Eleanor paused in the grand lobby, her eyes brimming with emotion. "You didn't tell me you named the restaurant after me," she said, her voice trembling. "I wanted it to be a surprise," Damon replied, squeezing her hand gently. "You deserve it. This all started because of you, Alexis Patterson." The new general manager, renowned for her talent and integrity, approached them with a warm smile. "Mrs. Carter, we're honored to welcome you. Your table is ready." They were led to the VIP table, the very same one Eleanor had been denied just 2 months prior. The servers, many familiar faces from the old days under Gareth Simmons' management, came by to greet her warmly. "We retained most of the staff," Damon explained as appetizers arrived. They were never the problem. They were victims too. Under the previous oppressive management, Eleanor quietly observed the dining room. Now diversity filled the space. Such a stark contrast to the monochrome atmosphere of the past. "The reservation system has changed too," Damon continued. "No manual interference allowed anymore, and pricing is now standardized and transparent." At that moment, a familiar face approached, Daniel Williams, now serving as assistant manager instead of just a waiter. "Mrs. Carter, it's wonderful to see you again," Daniel said, his eyes shining. "I just wanted to thank you. None of this would have happened without you." Eleanor clasped his hand gently. "You showed great courage. Daniel, how's your family? They're safe and settling in." "Well," Daniel smiled, And I'm finishing my professional culinary program at night. You'll be running your own restaurant before long," Damon added warmly. After Daniel left, Eleanor turned to her son, her expression thoughtful. "You've done something remarkable. But at what cost? The Langleys may have fallen. But what about others, like them?" I know Damon nodded. "The fight's not over, but Eleanor's will stand as a model for the changes yet to come." As they continued their meal, many guests stopped by their table. To greet them, community leaders, newcomers, curious about the restaurant that had already become a national symbol. "You didn't just create an inclusive restaurant," Eleanor whispered proudly. "You created an icon." "That was always the goal," Damon said, his eyes steady. Just then, commotion stirred at the entrance. Reporters jostled, cameras flashing. Alexis rushed over. "Mr. Carter, Daniel is looking for you. He seems urgent." Less than a minute later, Daniel appeared breathless and holding his phone. "You need to see this," he said. On his phone screen flashed a breaking news alert. Former Westbrook Manor employee reveals new evidence in Langley investigation. "It's not me," Daniel quickly clarified. "It's Kevin Blackwell. He used to work at Westbrook 5 years ago. After he was fired for whistleblowing on discrimination, he secretly collected evidence, and now he's gone." Public. Damon's expression grew serious. If what Daniel said was true, the situation was about to escalate even further. "He's got it all," Daniel said quickly. "Recordings hidden, fund transfers, even detailed plans." Senator Langley made to neutralize dissenters. Damon glanced at his mother. Eleanor gave a small, encouraging nod. "Bring him in," Damon ordered. Through the kitchen entrance to avoid the media room. The battle wasn't over. But now Damon Carter had found another powerful ally to help dismantle the rotten systems hidden beneath the city's polished surface. 10 minutes later, Kevin Blackwell, around 40 with sharp, steely eyes, entered. The Kevin Blackwell sat across from Damon Carter and Eleanor Carter, carrying the silence of a man who had harbored a secret for many years. "I've been following what you've done, Mr. Carter," he began bluntly. "You accomplished in 2 months what I tried and failed to do over 5 years, expose the true face of the Langley family." "You had evidence all along?" Eleanor asked gently. Kevin nodded, his face darkening. "After being thrown out of Westbrook Manor, I became obsessed with taking them down. I got a job at an accounting firm that handled the Langley's estates quietly, collecting documents, recordings, anything I could. But no one would listen. The Langleys controlled the press, the police, everything. Until now." Damon mused. "Exactly." Kevin confirmed. "After what you did, for the first time, people are starting to ask questions." He lowered his voice and continued. "The documents I just submitted to the feds go far beyond what's been made public. The corruption runs all the way through judges, police, regulatory agencies. It's an entire rotten system." Their conversation continued until dessert was served. As Kevin rose to leave for his meeting with the federal investigators, he paused in front of Eleanor, Mrs. Carter. "What you endured at Westbrook Manor, many of us went through the same. But we didn't have the strength to fight back. Thank you for raising a son like him." After Kevin left, Eleanor and Damon sat in silence for a moment. "This," Eleanor finally said, "is about so much more than a restaurant now, isn't it?" "It always was," Damon replied, his eyes deep with meaning. "The restaurant was just where it all surfaced." A little later, Alexis Patterson came to inform them. "The TV stations outside are requesting interviews with you and Mrs. Carter about the latest developments." "Not tonight." Damon declined. "Tonight is for celebrating." As mother and son stepped onto the newly renovated balcony overlooking the city glittering under the lights, Eleanor squeezed her son's hand. "You're not just fighting for me. You're fighting for everyone who's ever been told they weren't good enough." Damon nodded. thinking of Daniel Kevin and so many others who had been shut out of places of power because of their skin color, their background. "This is only the beginning," he said. "What we've exposed is just the tip of the iceberg. We have to keep tearing down the systems of exclusion that have existed for generations and build something better in their place," Eleanor added, pointing toward the dining room where laughter and lively conversation rang out from guests of all backgrounds. Late that night, back at his penthouse, Damon was getting ready for bed when the security system alerted him to a delivery. After his security team carefully checked it, he opened the envelope. Inside was just a single scrap of paper with a scrawled message. "We're watching you." Damon smirked slightly. They still didn't get it. Their time was over. The next morning, standing on the balcony, Damon Carter looked out over the awakening city. In the distance, the new sign Eleanor shimmered in the early sunlight, a symbol of rebirth. It had all started from a small injustice, yet had ignited an unprecedented wave of change. His phone buzzed a message from Eleanor. "The news is calling you the man who toppled an empire." Damon smiled and quickly typed back, "I like to think of myself as someone building a better world." He knew the journey was far from over, but he had set it in motion. Turning Westbrook Manor into Eleanor's wasn't just about changing a name. It was a bold declaration that spaces once closed off to some would now welcome all as long as they had talent and determination. And for people like the Langleys, who had built their power on exclusion and corruption, a bitter lesson awaited them. When truth and justice come knocking, even the most rotten empires are destined to fall. The battle was far from finished, but today Damon Carter had won a great victory. A victory not just for his mother, but for generations who had been left to linger in the shadows. As the city lights gradually illuminated the skyline, Damon Carter stood silently on the balcony, his gaze fixed on Eleanor's. The restaurant that just a few months ago had been a symbol of exclusion and discrimination. Now it had become a beacon of hope, representing a generation willing to challenge outdated injustices and gradually build a fairer system. Damon hadn't just fought for his mother, he had fought for everyone who had ever been rejected, dismissed, or devalued, simply because they were different. And you see, monumental change often begins with something as small as a table. Denied an injustice, witnessed a voice that dares to rise amid a silent crowd. If you believe that each of us in our smallest moments holds the power to ignite change, then let this story live on in your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue joining us on inspiring journeys like this one. Thank you for listening. See you in the next story.